I'm Kendra Klein. I am staff scientist with Friends of the Earth, our food and technology program. Our speakers today here are Mark Lipson and Klein. I'm going to give you a little bit of a consolidated overview of how fantastic they are and how lucky we all are to be able to learn from them about the Farm Bill. They've got many years of insight and experience to share. So Kari is Deputy Director of Friends of the Earth's Food and Technology Program. She implements market and policy campaigns that are aimed at reforming animal agriculture, reducing consumption of industrially produced meat and dairy, and increasing access to more sustainably produced meat and organic plant-based foods. She was previously a senior analyst and advocate with the Environmental Working Group, focused on U.S. Farm Bill, GMOs, climate change, organic agriculture, food security, and conservation policy. And prior to EWG, Kari worked as a sustainable food policy and fair trade consultant. She's a master's from UC Berkeley. Mark Lipson is a 30-year pioneer in the organic movement. He's now a senior program and policy specialist at the Organic Farming Research Foundation. He joined us from Santa Cruz today, and a research associate in organic agriculture policy at UC Santa Cruz. Mark served a 4.5-year term of service as the organic and sustainable agriculture policy advisor at the USDA. He received a BA in environmental studies from UC Santa Cruz, and since 1983, he's been a member of in Molino Creek Farm, a cooperative organic farming community in California. Previously, he's back at OFR now. He's previously the assistant executive director of CCOF and the policy director at OFR. So, welcome, ma'am. And we're going to do a little bit of a tag team between them. So I'm going to sit there and flag them down in terms of time. But Mark, I'll hand it off to you. And our goal for you to walk away to is in our very short amount of time, some understanding of what is the Farm Bill, why you should really deeply care about the Farm Bill, and some ways that you can get engaged in the upcoming Farm Bill process. Great.
Good afternoon, you guys. Thank you again for being here. Friday, 5 o'clock to talk about policy. Oh my God, a full room. I'm just like so stoked. Thank you. So we'll try and keep you awake. I'm going to just give you the lightning version of what is the Farm Bill. How many people sort of need the 101 or would like the 101? Yeah, good. Okay. We're going to try and do the haiku version, but that's always the goal. You know, I heard Wendell Berry a few years ago say he was trying to get it down to 6 words, everything he had to say. That's been my goal ever since. So, the Farm Bill, every 5 years, more or less, Congress goes through this very unique exercise. It's really unlike almost anything else that Congress does. It is a massive 1,500-page bill that reauthorizes not only all of the agriculture, farm-related programs, the subsidies, the conservation programs, energy, research, nutrition, or I'll get to nutrition in a second, trade, forestry, U.S. Forest Service, all that stuff is in the Farm Bill. And that's not even the biggest part. The biggest part of Farm Bill is nutrition supports. Food stamps, or SNAP, women, infants and children programs, school, some of the school lunch program, most of that's a separate bill. But anyway, it is enormous. It's, we have the numbers up there. Yeah, it's
over 10 years.
Some 100 billion order of magnitude projected over 4, 5, or 6 years. It's varied over the years. So those are all the different pieces of the Farm Bill that come together in this giant 3-dimensional chess game. Last time, the hardcore Republican right wanted to separate food stamps. The food stamps, SNAP, and everything else has been married together in the Farm Bill for many years because politically that's been necessary to pass either part of it. The urban interests that need and want to defend nutrition support the farm state legislators who have to deliver on the farm subsidies and all these other things that are part of the Farm Bill. So it's a fascinating and very unique part of what Congress does. Why should you care? Well, first of all, I mean, it's everything in the food and agriculture world. And to the extent that food and agriculture is a central part of our climate emergency, there you are with Farm Bill. There's no way around it. No solutions are possible without addressing farm policy. Because it's got everything, our objectives with respect to it are both constructing new alternatives. That's what I've been working on for 25 some years. I think, well, 1990 was my first Farm Bill, the Organic Foods Production Act, so almost 30 years. But it's also everything that we have to dismantle. It's not enough to just be nibbling around the margins creating our alternatives. We've done a good job, actually. There's much more there than people realize that has been done over the last 15, 20 years to do that. But it's only in this marginal space. The large-scale change is going to be when we actually get around to dismantling the 1,000, literally on the order of magnitude of 1,000 different things, 1,000 different pieces of policy layer that reinforce the basic fundamental U.S. food policy, which is cheap food. You know, there's some talk about, oh, we don't have a national food policy, and we need to have a national food policy. We do have a national food policy, and it's cheap food and everything else that implies in terms of cheapening and devaluing farmers, farm workers, the health of people who consume food, the environment, the climate. Current Farm Bill expires a year from now, September, 360 days from now, September 30th, 2018. Is when all of these programs will expire, and the basic underlying roots of the Farm Bill will revert to some permanent laws that were passed in like 1933 and 1949. And that's like a complete chaos scenario that nobody wants to face. So it's coming up. You know, they've started to work on it this year. There have been hearings and listening sessions. The respective agriculture committees in the House and Senate are winding their own paths towards theoretically producing a bill a year from now. The odds that they will actually pass a farm bill on time are pretty low, considering that they haven't really been able to do anything, almost anything. And it's going to go right down to the wire. It always does. They usually go over the deadline, so they do a short-term extension. But last time around, it ended up being a whole year partial extension. And in 2013, many of our key programs did not have money in that interim screw-up year. It was all caused by the SNAP battle over cutting out food stamps. So it's a dicey proposition in terms of what's actually going to happen this year. There are so many wild cards. And for many years, this urban-rural connection, alliance has been, breaking down more and more. For the last 3 farm bills, people said, oh, this is the last time we're going to be able to pull this off. They have kept managing to do it, but it's getting shaky. So, the landscape now, it's very constantly shifting. And 6 months ago, I would have said, forget this farm bill. It's not going to be worth our time except making it, just restricting the damage, trying to play defense and holding on to a few key things. I don't think that's the case now. It's different depending on which part of the farm bill you're talking about. And nutrition and food stamps is very different from conservation title and Title I, which is the farm subsidies. The political dynamics are kind of very different in each one of them. But in the area of organic, local and regional food systems, alternative approaches like to nutrition, like the double up bucks for SNAP, those have actually succeeded in penetrating widely enough in this country, and the organizing has been, not trivial at all, such that members of the majority in both houses have alliances with some of the groups and issues that we care about in this sphere. And God knows, maybe what's happening right now will alert some of them to they actually have to deal with the climate impacts of agriculture.
We can always hope. We're gonna get into the opportunities.
So that's just where I would leave it right now. It's up for grabs, and it is not a lost cause. It is vitally important that we double down, power out, and do our best shot this time around, because it could be our last. Specifically, what's happening with our organic research bill, and the fact that, just recognizing that organic farmers have an impact on the majority in Congress by virtue of where they are.
Where are they?
They're in red districts. They're in Republican districts and states. And OFRF and other people have, I've been organizing organic farmers on this very topic, for 20 years. And by God, some of them have been trained pretty well. And we're able to mobilize. So that's one part of it. And then just the breakdown of rigidity and sort of consistency within the majority party, means that they don't really care what Sonny Perdue's doing at USDA so much, or what some faction of the administration thinks is going to happen. So both of the chairmen are very seasoned, savvy, experienced politicians, and they want to own the Farm Bill, and they're going to do it their way. And we have enough support to make it realistic to do better than just holding back the damage. We can make some further progress, and maybe on some important things.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to take 5 minutes. So I'm going to go through this really fast. Great to see all of you. This is my fourth Farm Bill. I've been through 3, and they're all different, and they all face different political challenges. This has definitely got to be the strangest political year ever. But mostly there's a similar process that occurs, and so I'll try to go through it really quickly. He's talking about the chairman. So most of the Farm Bill is written in the House Agriculture and the Senate Agriculture committees, and these are the folks in those committees. So and it's really the chairman, it's the majority chairman that has the power in both the Senate and the House, and so they really control a lot of what gets into the Farm Bill. They're the gatekeepers, and then you have the minority that often has some influence, and they do consult. The House the agriculture committees are known to be the most bipartisan committees of all committees in Congress. And so that actually gives us a little bit of more I think, optimism that something can get done. And the fact that they haven't been able to pass anything out of this Congress in over a year, I think, is another thing they could say, oh, well, let's maybe get maybe the Farm Bill now looks actually easy compared to the other bills. Which, and the Farm Bill is never easy. So the chairs have a lot of power. Generally speaking, it's a more bipartisan bill, committee, like I said. The fact that the Republicans are in charge makes it harder for us. But the fact is that whether Democrats are in charge or Republicans are in charge, they're all in support of the same policies that are actually supporting a lot of degenerative agriculture, massive soy, corn subsidies, monocultures that are primarily serving factory farms and biofuels. And it's really a farm bill that is about supporting degenerative ag practices, not regenerative practices. So within this frame of the bill being written in the House and the Senate Ag Committee, and I understand actually from news reports that the House Ag Committee has actually already drafted a lot of their bill. The Senate not so much, and the chairman has said that he wants to Chairman Roberts has said that he wants it to get to the Senate floor in October or November. So they're going to keep pushing to try to get this done in this year because it's an election year next year, and they say you just cannot pass a farm bill in an election year. I don't know if that's true, but that's kind of they're really trying to push to get it done in the fall. But that was before DACA, and I think that there's just not going to be a lot of oxygen in the room. There's so much going on that I don't know if that's going to happen. But as the bill goes forward, I just want to talk about a couple of ways that we organize to influence the farm bill, and one key strategy is what we call a marker bill. How many of you have heard of marker bills? Few. So marker bills are a way to organize constituents, organize us, and build support for particular policies around particular issues, whether it's the Beginning Farmer and Rancher program or organic, and Mark's going to talk more about the organic marker bill, organic research marker bill. We're working on a sustainable livestock, hopefully a marker bill. And the idea is to develop the policies, put together a bill that's pretty limited in scope, and find co-sponsors on both the House in the House and Senate Ag Committees, ideally, because that's where you're going to get your bill. You're going to get more things into the bill if you can get it supported in the House and Senate Ag Committee. That's what's really important. And so the names that we put up here are really important. If any of you are in any of these districts, that's great because they listen to their, well, they listen more to their constituents than they do to us. Yeah, unfortunately, we don't. California is really underrepresented on the Ag Committee, and we always have been. And we need to change that eventually. But back to how. So the marker bill process is really important. Is a really important organizing tool. The goal is to get as many co-sponsors on the bill as you can to signal support, and you can do that by getting people to call their congresspeople and really get as many co-sponsors as you can on these bills. And the more co-sponsors you get, the more likely it is that you're going to get provisions from your marker bill into the chairman's mark, which is the legislation in the House and the Senate. So once the bill comes together in the Ag Committee, it gets voted out of the Ag Committee and onto the Senate or the House floor. And at that point, that's kind of where the big reform effort can take place, because reform is not going to really come from inside the committee. It's going to come from outside the committee. And so when the bills go to the floor, that's an opportunity for those who are organizing for things that could get into the chairman's mark to put amendments onto the floor and to organize organize the Congress around those amendments. And so we have leaders out there like Representative Blumenauer, for example, who is a big reform champion, and he's actually drafting his own alternative farm bill. We'll talk about that in a minute. He will be pushing on the floor, at least parts of that, when the bill actually goes to the floor. So once it goes to the floor, it goes to the Senate, the House. You have the amendment process, and oftentimes those amendments are limited, so you have to push for the amendments that you want. The amendments get voted on. We organize around that, and then it passes or it doesn't, but it probably will pass, and then it goes back to the House-Senate Conference Committee where they reconcile the Senate version and the House version, because they're two different bills. And that is a really behind closed doors kind of process, and a lot of things get changed at the last minute. It's a really challenging process to influence, but that's kind of what happens, and then it goes to the president for the bill, for him to sign. So that's kind of really quickly how the bill gets made, how the pork gets cooked. And one thing I just want to say, Mark mentioned it in terms of kind of what's at stake here. There's a lot of really bad policy in the bill. There's also a lot of, or not a lot, if you go back to this sliver here, that little purple sliver, that's where a lot of the good programs are. And so,
But it's got a little bigger.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about some of them. And I think what's going to happen is, if this bill expires in September 2018, which is when the bill is set to expire, we will lose a dozen or more of these really good programs that are supporting local and regional farmers, beginning farmers, organic, all kinds of programs that are really important to support the regenerative, economy, food economy, farm economy. And so that is kind of important. That's one reason it's really important that we get this bill done. So that's kind of in a nutshell.
The Organic Agriculture Research Act, H.R. 2436, authored by Representative Shelley Pingree from Maine. We're passing out a little flyer about it. This bill has been introduced. It's got bipartisan authors. On the majority side, we've got Representative Dan Newhouse from the state of Washington. All of this information is on our website at ofrf.org. Organic Farming Research Foundation, or OFRF as we like to call it. ofrf.org. And just very quickly, this bill is the only piece of the organic universe that all the organic groups agree on. Yeah, it's a little funny, but it's not really funny. But it is important. And what this bill will do, so since the late 1990s, we've been incrementally going from zero organic research and extension. 20 years ago, we authored the Searching for the O Word report, which documented it was pretty much zero. And that was the beginning of our political platform to get dedicated organic research funding. And that has grown successfully over the years. For the last 8 years, it's been at $20 million a year in competitive grants for organic research. And that is what is funding the capacity for organic and regenerative biological agriculture research around the country. That program is the main driver of faculty, graduate students, postdocs, undergrads. It's the biggest chunk of money that has yet been allocated to research and education in this sphere, for organic farming and all its associated things. Not strictly, no. They tend to be the most competitive. This is run by the USDA Institute for Agricultural Research, and so there are eligibilities for nonprofits and smaller grant awards, especially for conferences and that kind of thing. And some, but we've done a good job of sort of owning the stakeholder input to this program, and it is very dedicated to farmer participation in the university research, not only in the execution, but in the design of the objectives, and farmers sitting on the review committee. So, we think it's been quite well executed given the institution that it's in. And at ofrf.org, you can find the reports that we have recently done analyzing the whole portfolio over 15 years of this program and the other smaller programs around it. And we've done recently a national survey of organic growers to further hone in on what their research needs are. So we're bringing a data-driven agenda to Congress, which is very important that we be able to say, look, we got empirical analysis here of why this program is successful, why it should work. So what the bill will do is increase the funding from $20 million a year to $50 million a year. 150%. It's like a very audacious goal, especially in this environment, but we think the time is right to do that. A lot of factors coming together to make it possible. And what that $50 million threshold means is that it becomes part of what's called the baseline, which is the default assumed budget for USDA. But Congress doesn't consider anything permanent unless it hits that $50 million a year threshold. So by getting OREI, the Organic Research and Extension Initiative, up to $50 million a year, we not only vastly increase its capacity and impact, but we ensure that if there is a failure to pass a new farm bill, it's much more likely that the program will be included in any kind of extension that they do.
So are the California members, this is a marker bill, by the way, this is an example of like we need to organize and get as many co-sponsors on this bill as possible. Where's the California delegation on it?
Well, Jimmy Panetta on the minority side, new congressman replacing Sam Farr down in Monterey Carmel, is one of the main authors, along with Chelly Pingree from Maine, herself an organic farmer, and then Representative Newhouse from Washington State. So all the Democrats are chomping at the bit to sign on as co-sponsors, but the authors, Pingree, Panetta, and Newhouse, have been saying just hold your fire for a little while we get more majority members signed on as co-sponsors. So that's what our organization's been working on, and others over the summer, doing a lot of work in the districts over the recess that just ended, and trying to provide a lot of organic business input to the majority members in California especially. And one of the big great things that just happened is the California Farm Bureau put Pingree's marker bill in their recommendations for the Farm Bill, and have sent a letter signed by Paul Wegner, who's the president of the California Farm Bureau, to the chairman and ranking members of the committees, and to all the California members. So California Farm Bureau has endorsed this bill. So we think that's going to do us in very good stead over the next couple of weeks in breaking through that barrier and getting the majority, some of the majority members from California and elsewhere signed on as co-sponsors of this bill. Then we'll open up the gates and say, okay, everybody on the minority side who wants to sign on to this also, please do that. And then we'll get up into the hundreds of co-sponsors. So Title II, the Farm Bill has 12 titles, chapters. Title II for many years has been the conservation title. So that's the conservation programs, the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, Wildlife Habitat Incentives Program, Conservation Security Program, all the money that is used as grants and cost sharing directly to farmers for installing conservation measures on their farms. Now, for most of the last, since the Dust Bowl, various incarnations of the USDA conservation programs have been sort of engineering oriented, physical arresting of the movement of soil. And then more recently, sort of limiting the damage of CAFO, concentrated animal feeding operations, and sort of trying to limit the environmental damage of agriculture. In the last, say, 10 years, the beginnings of consciousness of the biological nature of soil and not just the physical engineering medium has begun to penetrate. And the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition and the Center for Rural Affairs and a large number of agricultural conservation groups have done great work over the last few farm bills to sort of build up those alternatives and nurture this consciousness of sustainability and biological nature of soil. So that's where the regenerative impulse hopefully will gain some momentum. We don't have a marker bill yet for how that's going to happen. I don't think.
It's in process. There's a lot of marker bills out there in process right now.
And in part, that's sort of waiting for a signal about what would actually make sense, be acceptable to the majority members. Some change in the level of climate denial. So those are kind of the parts of the algorithm. And we can talk more about that if we have time for questions, but the conservation title is where soil, not oil, is going to have its other home. And but I just want to reemphasize it. The Organic Research Program, the Organic Research and Extension Initiative, and this marker bill to increase its funding by 150%, that is where regenerative agriculture is being supported in federal policy. The cultivation of science for organic agriculture and the way this program operates, it is about systems, it's about biology, and it is also, you know, I love the way you put that, actually, the economy of regenerative agriculture. So that's the biggest asset that we have right now, and we need to use it to lead the way to penetrate these other areas of the Farm Bill to create regenerative agricultural policy at the federal level.
Yeah. And I'll just add one thing that's important about it's particularly EQIP, the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, has an organic transition program within it, and that's actually been providing some of the most support that we have in the Farm Bill for helping producers transition to organic practices and actually get certified. They have to be showing that they're moving towards certification. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to talk about Farm Bill opportunities for regenerative pasture-based livestock and poultry production. That's something that Friends of the Earth has been working on for the last year with a coalition of organizations led by a steering committee of the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, Western Organization of Resource Councils, Johns Hopkins Center for Livable Future, Union of Concerned Scientists, the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, and the Rural Advancement Foundation International. So we have been working hard to identify needs and develop policies that we think can actually be embraced by both the minority and majority in the House Ag Committee, which is kind of a limiting factor to kind of be working with, but if we want to make progress in that and actually get something in the Farm Bill, we've kind of made this decision that we're going to go for policies that can actually be embraced by both Republicans and Democrats at this point. And so we went through a process of interviews with like 60 different producers, processing companies, businesses, NGOs, researchers, and identified a range of kind of issues. Number one, the research shows that supply is not keeping up with demand. There's an incredible growth in the demand for certified organic, grass-fed, higher welfare animal products, and that supply is not keeping up with demand. We've got, I think, 17% growth in organic animal products last year, and in terms of grass-fed, it's huge, the growth. And 80% right now of grass-fed meat is imported, right? And so we think that we have an opportunity to educate the ag committees about the fact that we are missing out and our producers are missing out on this incredible market opportunity. And so we're not going to be talking to them about climate change. We're going to be talking to them about economic opportunity for producers. I just think and we're working on in the market space also at Friends of the Earth to try to build support for the domestic producers on grass-fed. We also found really difficult challenges economically with concentrated markets, unfair contracts, and artificially low prices that are killing farmers. Like they just cannot get the prices that they want in the marketplace for what they're providing. Also, a huge array of technical, legal, financial, and infrastructure challenges, big problems with processing, especially. And then the other piece is about the conservation funds, which are often used to provide infrastructure rather than support organic and sustainable livestock management. So EQIP is a program where it's by mandate that they have to spend 60% of the funds on animals. But most of that 60% of the EQIP funding is going to support the industrial animal machine. It's not going to support pasture-based systems. And so the real solution for that is actually at a state-by-state level. We have to go and work with our state conservation people in each state to actually move that. But there are things we can do in the Farm Bill to kind of move the needle and get more support for regenerative livestock production. So that's what we're focused on. We have several provisions, and I'll pass out just a summary of these at the end. So we're just getting close to finishing our kind of policy proposals. more support for conservation programs for for regenerative livestock, pasture-based systems. Also increased technical marketing and infrastructure support, especially focusing on small-scale producers and processing plants. Looking to get market data on pasture-based and grass-fed labeled animal products. So right now, the marketing AMS, the marketing division that collects the data, is not collecting and distributing a lot of information about grass-fed and other labeled products, so that the farmers don't know what the prices, what the best prices they can get. And so we learned through our research that getting more market data is really important, and also research and extension support for pasture-based and for transitions, so that there's more technical assistance. And then we're proposing a research study, a pilot research study that shows, we hope, will show reduced risk and increased resiliency from well-managed pasture-based and mixed crop livestock systems, which would help to get better insurance instruments and discounts for pasture-based and mixed crop livestock systems. So we're kind of in the process where we're finalizing that. We're shopping this around to Ag Committee members, trying to find sponsors so that we can turn it into a marker bill and actually organize around it. There are a number of other elements that we're not including in this kind of inside, committee strategy, which is focused on bigger reforms to EQIP to get more money set aside for pasture-based systems, crop insurance reforms, a pasture-based transition program. So like I mentioned, there's like an organic transition program. We want to set aside funding to support producers that are shifting to pasture-based, and also support for third-party certification, so that a higher welfare, producers that are shifting to higher welfare systems will get more support. And what we're trying to do right now is actually work with the Blumenauer and other members that we think would include some of these proposals in their kind of off-committee strategy, off-committee bills. Blumenauer in particular has put forward the Food and Farm Act, which has a lot of reform elements in it. And as I said, he's probably going to be introducing some of these onto the floor once the Farm Bill goes to the floor. And the key aspects of that are limits on commodity subsidies, strengthening conservation compliance and crop insurance, which is actually one of the most important reforms that we can do in the Farm Bill to ensure resiliency and regeneration in our big, in the 300 million acres that are now planted in monoculture. If we don't, the conservation compliance provision would basically say, if you're going to get taxpayer money for crop insurance, you have to implement much better soil management practices, soil conservation practices on your lands. And if there's one thing that everybody who works on regenerative agriculture should be focused on, it's conservation compliance. So just put a pitch in for that. Also supporting the beginning farmer and rancher, more support for beginning farmers and ranchers. We know we need more young, new farmers. Nutrition programs. There's also a new provision around reducing food waste in the Farm Bill. He wants to create a whole new title on food waste, which I think is really exciting. The conservation programs and increase funding for sustainable agriculture research, and then invest in local and regional food systems. And that includes investing in the whole set of programs that would support value-added aggregation, processing, all of the things that small-scale pasture-based producers need more support for in order to aggregate their product and get it to market. So we're really hoping that Blumenauer's bill will get some legs, and that people will organize around it to show that we need alternatives to the current bill. So I'll just wrap up real quickly by saying that we're pushing for, we're working on this marker bill. Also, the organic research bill is a really important bill for ranchers because animals are absolutely supported in that bill, and it's a really that's kind of part of what we will be supporting. We'll be encouraging others to support. There's also a whole host of other programs and also bills that will be coming that also support pasture-based systems and other regenerative agriculture systems. And so I just wanted to highlight some of them so you would be familiar with them. The Beginning Farmer and Rancher Program, the Local Food Farm and Farmers Market Promotion Program, Value Added Producer Grant Program, Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education, Organic Cost Share, Outreach and Assistance. What is Organic cost share is for farmers that want assistance for getting their certification costs. So it covers $750 per farm for certification costs. So it defrays the cost of certification. And we would actually love to see that for other kinds of certification systems like grass-fed or animal welfare approved. But that's really tricky because, of course, we can't get a lot of like mainstream support. Organic. And then the Farm to School, there's a new Farm to School Act that's just been introduced. It's another bipartisan effort. I think that's a great bill. It's also a marker bill, and will, has some chance of getting into the Farm Bill, which is going to increase the funding to support the direct farmer to school programs. So those are some of the bills that, these are some of the programs that are really important. They're the small programs, but important, small but mighty.
Just one more to mention, we're expecting a marker bill on food waste. From Shelley Pingree.
On what?
On food waste.
Food waste.
Does that include composting? Or?
Yes, I'm sure that's part of it. That is a subject that's had a lot of interest and, so clear that, we're not going to solve these problems unless we solve that one. And it's so stupid, how much food we waste. Maybe that'll... Anyway, that's just another one on the list that'll be in the mix over the next year as we try and, fight our way further in this Farm Bill struggle. That warfare's been going on forever. It's in a very sophisticated, advanced phase. It's a factor.
I think
I don't know what else to say about it right now.
I don't think that, the organic, it's the organic research in particular, I don't think is as much of a target as some other more controversial parts of the Farm Bill. Like there's something called the competition title, which is really, which we've been trying to reform to get more fairness for contracts for poultry poultry contract farmers and others. And that's where you find like the big corporations are going in and doing massive lobbying to say, keep it out.
Well, Regenerative doesn't have a lot of recognition yet.
Right. Which can be good and bad. I'm wondering what you're using.
It doesn't have, large toxicity.
Yes.
Frankly, for many years, this is actually easing a bit, but for a long time, the term agroecology has been sort of toxic because of the international implications. State Department, use that term. Regenerative is still kind of fresh. However, soil health is very, very current and widely enamored across the spectrum. Very conservative groups are embracing that, at least their version of, oh yeah, duh, soil is a biological thing, so the health of the biology is kind of important. So that's more what we are, the flag we are carrying.
Soil health.
Also, a ton of interesting work on rural development economic impacts of organic. Look for the organic hotspot, if you like, Google organic hotspot study. University of Pennsylvania has published this very, very solid, very rigorous pure economic research that shows where you have clusters of organic businesses developing, it impacts the income level of the entire county. It's done on a county basis at a level that's equivalent to the child tax income credit, which is very, very significant. It is a poverty alleviating effect to develop a certain threshold of organic food and agriculture businesses, both production and process.
One is in terms of California being underrepresented. There's just such a bias towards the middle of the country agriculture. On the ag committees, they choose their people, and I think we have to do our, I guess I don't want to put it on us, but you do have to organize sometimes to get people to actually want to be on the committee, right? So they do get to put their preference. Or if we think there's particular members that we want to be on to represent, we need to organize and demand and ask them to go and represent us. And so if there's particular folks like Jared Huffman, for example, in Marin, he would be great on the Ag Committee. Like he would carry all of this work forward. So maybe we should go and really talk to him and get him to put in a request to the, so it happens like that to some extent. But
It's sort of been a self-fulfilling prophecy that, well, the Farm Bill doesn't really do that much for California, so California's not going to do that much on the Farm Bill. It's all about commodity subsidies for the Midwest, and the produce industry has really not wanted to participate so much until the last 15 years when specialty crops research and farm to school salad bar and that kind of stuff, has
and conservation
gained momentum.
and conservation is really important to the state. And so if you're interested, the CDFA has a whole platform now about what they're supporting in California. You can just go, if you Google CDFA Farm Bill, but how you break the subsidies is the $100 million question, and there are so many groups out there across so many different sectors that see subsidies as being a major detriment to whatever their issue is. And if everybody came together to organize outside of the Ag Committee so that when the Farm Bill gets to the floor and we have some champions in Congress that basically, they could shut it down. I mean, they could do major reforms to it, but it would take just a massive organizing effort to get folks outside of it. It will never happen inside the Ag. It takes 10% of consumers to shift purchasing practices of big companies. 10%, we can't even get when you get 60 or 70% of voters to say, I want this, it still gets hampered by the big money interests. So we are big believers in going to the market and mobilizing consumers to ask and demand better food that is based on all the principles that we all care about. And we've seen a tremendous progress in that area. And I think there's a huge amount of work to be done. And then as we put more pressure on the companies to start sourcing better quality meat and dairy products, in particular in the animal sector, then our theory of change is that there'll be so much pressure on our farmers to deliver that maybe then they can put more pressure on Congress, put more pressure on USDA to say, there's this huge amount of demand coming from all these companies, Applegate, and right now Applegate is importing from New Zealand. Chipotle is importing their meat. I mean, it's Panera's importing all of their meat.
I got nothing better in the category of optimism, so go with that. Just recent demonstrations of what Kari is talking about. In fact, what she herself has worked on. I mean, the McDonald's thing, all the egg stuff. Very, very powerful change at the market level, just by sheer dint of consumer force. And
with some organizational push behind it. I think we've gotten 15.
Well, yeah, no, consumers have to be mobilized.
Yeah, mobilized. But yeah.
It's not spontaneous.
But the meat issue is much harder because we're trying to move in that market, and it's much harder. We can go to these big, fast food companies and say, okay, shift your chicken production away from antibiotics because the suppliers are coming in, the pressure is there, and they're shifting their practices. When we go in and say we want domestic certified grass-fed meat in your store or in your restaurant, they're like, well, we just don't have a supply. It's really hard. And then it's like, okay, well then you need to invest in the supply. So then we need to get the private sector to do more direct investment and kind of circumvent the government.